Hi there. In this video, I want to share with you 5 essential skills that you should master as a sound effect creator. These are skills that you're going to want to spend some time with, probably on a daily basis, if not a weekly basis, to be able to develop your skill and to just improve as an overall sound designer and sound effect creator. Now, before we actually jump into the video and what these skills are, I just want to say that these 5 skills are not skills that I have completely mastered yet. These are ongoing skills that I'm developing on an ongoing basis. And I think they're also skills that everyone who is in this field or in this industry should also be developing on an ongoing basis. I don't think anyone ever arrives at a place where they have mastery of a certain skills. It's kind of something that you're always improving on. So I just want to put that out there. I think this is just something that I'm still working on. I'm still practicing every day. With that said, before we actually get into it, if you're new here, I have a gift for you. It is a sound design training that I put together. It's a free training, a video training where I basically share how to get started, how to build an online presence, and how to build your portfolio. So if you're interested in seeing that, if you're starting out in sound design and video game sound design or just sound effect creation, make sure to check it out. I'll leave a link in the description, and it'll walk you through step by step how you can start doing that. So check it out if you're interested. With that said, let's get into number 1. All right, the first skill that we should develop as sound effect creators is to practice and develop the skill of doing redesigns and recreations. So redesigns and recreations are actually a little bit different from each other. A redesign usually is taking a clip or some sort of animation and then putting your own design to it, while a recreation is hearing what somebody else has done to a clip or a redesign or a game or something, and then trying to match your design as closely as possible to the original. And I think both are good and both have value in practicing each. When you're starting out, my suggestion would be to do recreations. That means to try to recreate something that's already been created, so that you always have a reference point to point yourself towards. So you're always going to have a certain standard to listen for and to measure yourself against. And I think that's really good to be able to up your sound design level and sound design skill to be able to learn more. And in doing that, you'll also be doing some redesigns as well. So as you're doing recreations and creating new sound effects, whether let's say you're doing some sort of sci-fi gun or something like that, well, as you're trying to recreate one from an original game, what you're going to realize is that sometimes you're going to be like way off the mark, but you're going to be creating some other sounds that are really cool. And then those techniques and things that you've learned along the way are things that you're going to be able to take with you for other designs that you do in the future, right? So yeah, that's a super important skill to develop. And the way that I would suggest to develop the skill is to just challenge yourself to have like one clip a week where you're doing a redesign or a recreation from scratch. So when you're starting out, what I would suggest is to just keep it super, super, super simple and keep it super short. So as short as like you're just redesigning one sound effect. And that's what I started with when I was doing my redesigns and recreations. I would choose one sound. So for example, if there was a sequence where there was a video game sequence and it was a first-person shooter, I would just isolate the gunshot and just redesign that one single gunshot. That's it. Just one gunshot, one sound, and that's it. And that's what I would focus my time on so that I can get it as close as possible and just practice getting that gunshot right. After that, in the next week, then I would challenge myself to do a different one. So every week, try to challenge yourself to do a different sound that you don't know how to do very well yet, or that you think would be a challenge for you. Like, oh, I'm not too sure how this was done. Okay, I'm going to try to see if I can implement something or do some sort of design to challenge myself to become better and figure this kind of sound out. And sometimes what's also really useful and what I found really useful for myself is that you do a certain category of sounds. So for example, spells. Let's say you're doing like magic spells, okay? What I would do is maybe for like a month or 2 or 3, all you're doing is magic spells, but they're all going to be different ones. So maybe you have a magic water spell, maybe you have a magic earth spell or another week, and then some sort of evil spell another week, right? So every time you're doing spells so that you're always kind of entrenched for a long time in this kind of category of sound effects, and you're really focused and you're diving deep on this kind of category and this maybe even a certain specific genre, right? So and as you're doing that, you're going to start noticing connections between the different sounds. You're going to start understanding the genre. You're going to start understanding, okay, what kind of sounds you need to record, right? So as you're challenging yourself to do a redesign every week, I think it's good to also have some sort of category for every like month or 2, so that it keeps yourself focused and you can go deep into a certain kind of sound effect. All right, the second skill that I would suggest mastering and developing is ear training. And basically this is developing your ear and your ability to hear different things. This is everything from hearing frequencies, from hearing what effects and how they are being processed and how they're processing sound, everything from like stuff like compressors, reverbs, EQs, right? So all these things are super important because you're going to use them on a daily basis in your sound design. So being able to develop your ear to hear those effects, to hear that sound is super important. And the way that I suggest to do that is by using SoundGym. So SoundGym is an online platform where they basically use games to develop your ear. So most of the training is musical in that you'll be listening to music when you're playing the games and doing the EQ moves and the compression and reverb and all that stuff. but I found that it's actually very transferable because it's more like a audio engineer skills, right? So it's something that's transferable from like audio and music production to sound effect creation and audio production in that sense. So if you're not already doing that, I highly suggest it. Sound Gym, they also have a free version where you can start training yourself for free. So check that out if you are interested. All right, number 3 is the skill of field recording or audio recording. This is where you can go and actually record your own sounds, whether it's around your house or wherever, and you bring that back into your computer and you start editing it and processing it and layering it together to create sound effects. So that whole process that I just outlined there, that is super important because it'll teach you basically what it takes to go from a raw sound that you recorded to something that's been refined and edited to be able to go into a finalized project, right? So that entire process is super important. And the way that I like to challenge myself to do this, and maybe you can challenge yourself as well, is to choose at least one sound or at least one layer, if not all the layers. When you're doing a redesign, let's say you're doing a weekly redesign, have at least one portion of that redesign be recorded from scratch. So if, let's say again, you're doing like a sci-fi gun or something like that, maybe for the mechanical portion of the sound, you're going to record that from scratch. You're going to find items around your house that are mechanical, maybe metallic, let's say, and you're just going to record them, you're going to edit them, you're going to process them and figure out a way to use it within that sci-fi context, right? So yeah, recording sound effects, very important. All right, the 4th skill to develop and master as a sound designer, as a sound effect creator, is layering. And for layering, I like to think of it in 2 separate kind of categories. One, there is your high, mids, lows, where you're thinking about frequency layering. And then there's one where I think about like texture layering. So let me break down each of these for you. Frequency layering, a common practice is to layer sounds by frequency. So you have your high frequencies, your mids, and then your lows. And as long as you have usually at least one layer or one sound filling out each of those 3 layers, usually you're good. You can also have like a 4th layer, which would be like your sub, but it's not always necessary. It's not even always necessary to have your lows. Sometimes you only need your mids and your highs. Sometimes you only need your highs, right? So it's totally sound effect dependent. But in general, if you're looking to create a sound effect that's like that fills up the entire frequency spectrum, usually it'll sound a lot more satisfying and better to the listener. So so frequency layering, high, mids, lows, and then sub, and then texture layering. The way that I like to think about this, I call it texture layering. I don't know if there's maybe a better word for it, but basically I like to think about the purpose of each of the layers. So for example, again, let's say we go with that sci-fi weapon gunshot. You might have something like a mechanical sound for that gunshot. Well, that mechanical sound can be in the mids, the highs, and the lows. You might also want a tail. Well, the tail of that gunshot might also be mids, highs, and lows. So even though they're filling out those frequencies, they have a different purpose and they serve a different purpose, right? So you can have a real gunshot, again, that could be mids, highs, and lows. You can have a real mechanical sound, mids, highs, and lows. And then you can have a gunshot tail, mids, highs, and lows. So because they're filling out different purposes, I call those more like texture sound. So together you want to have usually some sort of combination of texture and then a combination of like frequency layering to make sure that the sound is full. And the way to practice layering is just by doing it. There's not really any other way to do it. It's just by layering sounds together and seeing how you can create different sounds and how sounds interact with each other as you layer stuff together, as you split up the start time of sounds, how do they get punchier, stuff like that. So it's just actually doing it, and this just comes with time. All right, the 5th skill to master is synthesis, and this includes a lot of different kinds. There's a lot of kinds of synthesis, including subtractive, additive, granular, spectral, sample-based, wavetable. So because there's so many, what I would suggest is to start really simple and either start with something that's going to be more useful for your work, which is probably going to be something like sample-based synthesis or granular synthesis. If you want to start like from a very simple, basic understanding of synthesis, if you have like no experience with it, maybe go with subtractive synthesis first, because it's probably the most simple to understand. Once you have the basics down, then it's easy to transfer kind of your knowledge of that into granular and sample-based synthesis. All right, so that is it. Those are 5 skills that I would highly recommend developing and improving and mastering if you want to become a great sound effect creator. So what's one skill that you're going to commit to developing? And is there a skill that I missed that I should have included in here that I didn't put in here that's super important? Let me know down in the comments below. And since you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I'm sure there's another video you're going to like. It's my 6 must-have Reaper script. So if you're using Reaper to create sound effects as a sound designer, you probably want to check this out. This is like 6 Reaper scripts that I use to create sound effects, and they're super, super useful. Save me a ton of time. So make sure to check that video out. I'll put it either in the cards or somewhere on the screen if you want to check it out. All right, so that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.